Greetings and welcome to I Care Leadership Live. This is the podcast for I Care leaders who want to level up their leadership, create better cultures, and improve the financial results of their clinics. Now, let's join the show. My guest today is Savory Terman, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I'm gonna break the what do they call it? The fourth wall. I don't know. We were just talking beforehand about how you like to refer to yourself and coach, executive coach, leadership coach. And you had an interesting take on that, which I think it really it helps to highlight how you look at what you do. But you're a coach, but can you kind of talk about what we were just talking about there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of us use the terminology executive coach just because it's really well recognized throughout industry. I find that I have an issue with that, just ethically, internally, because within organizations, often executives are the people who coaching is provided for, professional coaching is provided for. And certainly that has impact and that can be really monumental. I also find that executives sometimes really have less face time and touch the least amount of people within the organization.
Yeah.
The people who really need leadership coaching and to discover their own leadership style and who they are and how they want to present and how they lead their people well are the people who are on the front line. Those leaders, the middle management, those in director roles that are kind of climbing to that C-suite level, those are the folks who we really should be investing in a lot more in terms of coaching. And so I lean into the terminology leadership coach primarily because whether we're in a formal leadership position or we're leading in our families or in our friend groups and social circles, and also we're the CEOs of our lives. So I lend more myself to the term leadership coach. It's how do you discover how you want to lead your life, your team, your business, your organization.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm honored to have you here, and thank you for that explanation because I think it really kind of illustrates how you look at the work that you do. And we're here to talk about coaching your team. And this is I Care Leadership Live, and if whoever's out there listening is probably in the eye care world, ophthalmology or optometry, and you're probably a leader or you're an aspiring leader. And coaching might be something that you might need to do at some point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think within the workforce, ophthalmology, healthcare, everything, the word coaching is used, and it's such a spectrum word. And it's used from everything from disciplinary actions or behavior performance changes to succession planning, personal or professional development. It's everything in between. So it's a big spectrum to cover when you use the word coaching. It's a heavy lift for that word.
Yeah, you're right. I've definitely, as an HR person, I've definitely, heard people use it in the more negative connotation. Like, hey, we need to have a coaching. We're going to do a little coaching here, and that could be really serious or just kind of serious. But I'm guessing that you're not really the disciplinary type of coach. What are some of the typical types of conversations that you have as a coach?
Yeah. So most of my coaching is the fact that I'm an external source for people now. I'm not an in-organization coach. I don't work within a company. And so I'm coaching people, my clients specifically, to their agendas, whatever those things are. I'm not necessarily coming in as a consultant. And I'd love to take a second to just differentiate some different types of coaching that we use.
Okay.
In the nomenclature, we have consulting is more of you tell me what's going on. I tell you how you should handle it. And that's what we do a lot of times as leaders. And people will bring us questions. We're in the positions that we're in as managers. I myself was a manager within a large organization. And I got to that place because I'm good at fixing things. I fix problems and I'm good at that, right? And so that's how a lot of us got into our roles without formal management training, is we were really good at fixing problems. And so people bring things to us and we fix them. But often what happens is the more we do that, the more people come to us and the more stuff we have to fix and the closer we get to burnout because we're doing so much more.
Mm.
And when I'm working with leaders, a lot of times I'm hearing things like, I don't have time to develop my people. I've got too much to do. There's too much work. We don't have the budget to train our leaders. There's so many limiting factors for leaders within the eye care, the healthcare, the global workplace organization that we just have a really hard time carving that out. So we go into this fixer mode, this consultant mode. Bring me your problems, let me give you an answer. Bring me your problems, let me give you an answer. Sometimes we get to shift it to more of a mentor type role where I've done this before. That's kind of the perspective. I'm the mentor. I've done this before. Let me tell you or lead you in how you can do this as well. So we see this being referred to a lot in social media and other types of communication. People will say, oh, I'm a business coach. I built my business to 7 figures. I can teach you how to do it too.
Okay.
That's a mentor. That's an instructor. That's somebody telling you, this has been my experience. This is how I've successfully done it. Let me introduce you to those principles as well. So we're hearing the word coach used in that space, but really, truly, that's what people are doing. They're giving you mentoring and it has so much value.
Yeah.
How it differs now for me is I am working with people to try to discover their own answers within themselves. And that in and of itself can be a little confusing because you might say, well, obviously I can figure out my own answers. If I have them, I can figure them out. Ultimately, sometimes we can't. The neuroscience behind it is we have blocks, we have blinders, we have things that get in our way. So having somebody to help us process those things, listen completely and fully and ask the questions can be really impactful in that space. So that's where I get to serve my clients now.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so that's interesting. I think about, as when I've been a leader in-house, I've probably done mostly the mentoring and the fixing,
Yeah.
right? And maybe not so much of the coaching aspect. And so I think, I guess my curiosity is like, well, is coaching, quote unquote, something that is even appropriate for people who are in-house, or should they leave the coaching to the outside experts?
I think you can do both. I think it can be in-house, and I think there's a time and place for it.
Okay.
Not every situation allows that space. I jokingly say it's kind of like teaching your kids how to tie their shoes. Sometimes you're in a hurry, you're late to work, you got to get stuff done, right? So you tie the shoes. But if you never take the time to sit down and make the little bunny ears and do all of the things and let them make the mistakes and have the space and the time and the patience to help them get there, what ends up happening is you're tying their shoes for prom, right? It doesn't serve you, it doesn't serve them. And so you can't expect growth if you haven't given some time and given some energy and effort into that. So I think there's a space for that in-house. And if you step back and go, okay, we're all on the same page. I want my employee to do well at work. They want to do well at work. Most people don't wake up in the morning and say, how can I really screw my day up today? Most people want to do a great job. So you sort of already have the same agenda. How do you get the processes flowing? What are your techniques? What are your tools to start to help people to develop that processing themselves so they don't have to come to you to fix every single time?
Okay, that makes sense. I love the shoe tying analogy.
Yeah.
It kind of hits home for me as a dad of a 10-year-old who is maybe could use some coaching on the shoe tying department. Okay, so there's a real benefit to coaching, I think, is what I'm getting from you. And the benefit is you can help that person fish for themselves, right? As opposed to giving them a fish or teaching them to fish. So what's maybe one technique that, let's say I'm a practice administrator, maybe I'm a physician and I'm running a practice, what is a technique that I could apply to start to get some of that benefit?
Mm. I think probably the easiest thing that we can do is ask better questions.
Okay.
Leading with curiosity, I think, is a really good tip for people. I say that because our brains are wired to fill in gaps that we don't have and to
Mm.
complete those gaps and come up with a story.
Okay.
So we've already, when I say we, as managers, as people, we've already created and crafted a story in our minds when we show up for a conversation most of the time. Sometimes we have data gaps and we substitute our own belief systems or we substitute our own knowledge and we come out with a verdict or a conclusion. And as a manager, you have to realize not only is that happening in your brain, that's happening in the brain of the person that you're sitting there talking to. That's how we're hardwired. So often as managers, we're trying to convince an already decided jury that they need to change their verdict.
Mm.
That's a heavy load, right?
Mm.
And so ultimately, by going in with more questions and leading with more curiosity, that can be helpful. And that can be helpful in disciplinary
Mm.
conversations, in initial conversations when you're setting the tone for a project you want someone to lead, trying
Mm.
to get alignment there, coaching up if you have a disagreement with your physician and you don't know how to talk about it. All of those things can be really helpful.
This show is sponsored by Seasoned Advice HR Services, where I help eye care businesses to make more money and save more money by hiring better, retaining better, and reducing your HR risk. If you would like an HR assessment or ongoing HR support, please reach out to me at seasoned-advice.com. Let's do a for instance here,
Yes.
because I really like the coaching up. That was one that
Okay.
kind of caught my my ear there. So
Hmm.
let's say I'm a practice administrator and I am frustrated a little bit because I don't feel like my physician owner or my main go-to doctor, maybe they're doing some behaviors that are counterproductive in my view. It could be anything. So how could I approach that person with a coaching mindset, and a questioning mindset?
Yeah. So let me choose a behavior that I've heard about a lot when I was in practice, that I had to
Okay.
address a lot when I was in practice.
Great.
The doctor who really wants to stay on time, but they show up to clinic 40 minutes late.
Okay. I've never heard of that. Wink, wink.
I get staff complaining about that. I used to get staff complaining about that. And it's hard because it's your boss. Maybe they're the company owner. So it's like, well, it's their company. They can do what they want. But then everybody's dealing with the pushback from the patients and everybody's staying late. And then you as a manager getting hit for overtime and all of these things are going on. And so often I would bring that to the physician in the mindset that, hey, I'm not here to fix the guy. I'm here to address the problem or gal in the situation. I'm not here to fix the doctor. I'm here to address the problem with them. Right. So it's not, I'm going into it with the mindset that we're on the opposite sides. I'm going into it with the mindset that it's not my job to fix this. It's my job to bring it up, to surface it, and let's have a conversation about it. Right. So
Okay.
I would go into that conversation with an observation and then a question.
Okay.
So the observation is, Dr. Mike, I understand that we want to keep clinic on time. You've shared with me some struggles that you've had with clinic staying on time. I've noticed that I usually don't see you in clinic until 9:45 in the morning when we start at 9. I'm wondering, or how would you like to work together to make sure we stay on time when your arrival time is behind? Should we adjust the schedule? You can start to play with more questions. If you're feeling kind of nervous, you can offer some ideas. For most people, I like to tell them, sit in the silence. Ask the question, sit in the silence. It's very uncomfortable at first, But the silence is where the magic happens, because that jury in their brain is going, oh, well, if you look at it, I want to stay on time. And so it allows for that processing to happen. So if you can give yourself that little pause and let yourself sit in the awkwardness of the silence, then they can come to conclusions in their head. That's how I would approach that.
Okay, so it sounded like, and that was a great little two-step approach that you kind of outlined, with that first step that I heard being like, I'm kind of setting our common ground here. Is that kind of what you were trying to go for? Of like, hey, I know we have some common ground that's known.
Yeah, because immediately when you start questioning someone, you know that there may be some defensiveness. So a lot of times we ourselves get in the mindset that we have to overcome the defensiveness that they have.
Okay.
We don't have to overcome the defensiveness, right? We just need to remind, hey, we're on the same page. I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to surface the issue. We both have this common goal.
Yeah.
We both want to win. We both want to leave at 5. We both want patients happy. We both want staff happy. We want overtime to go down. All of those things are important to both of us. Here's my observations. What are we going to do?
What can we do? So let's say that I'm Dr. Mike here in this situation, and maybe I get defensive because I can smell where we're going with this, and I don't like where it's going.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, Savory, I'm busy, and you don't know what I have to deal with, and so you're just gonna have to understand that this is my life, and I'm one of the doctors.
Yeah, go ahead. Finish your disagreement, Dr. Mike.
Oh no, that's all I need to say to you, Savory.
Yeah. I fully get that. I get that we all have a lot going on outside of this company. I totally understand that. And I totally also understand the fact that you want to run your practice the way you'd like to run your practice. The dilemma that I'm finding is that you have these expectations of how the practice would run, and I need to either adjust those expectations for the team and our schedule, or I need your help in adjusting when you're coming into the clinic. If there's another option, if you have another solution, I'm certainly open. Let's problem solve this together. Right? So bring it back to the fact that we're problem solving. We're not on opposite sides of this fence.
I love it. Because you are trying to create a collaborative conversation here, and which is especially important, if you're talking to someone senior to you, right? Because you can't approach that and say, hey, this is how it's going to be, and when are you going to start showing up on time? So this is a super awesome ninja technique. Another ninja technique I think I heard you use, which was you agreed with the pushback at first. You found a way to kind of agree with it, which was you said, you know what, I get it. We all have things going on. So that was that was a very nice move you used right there.
That's empathy. And too often people confuse empathy with sympathy. And empathy with excusing behavior. Empathy is, look, you're a person. I'm a person. I get it. However, the requirements on us as leaders within the organization, those don't change, right? I'm honoring your humanity, but I'm still asking you for a level of performance that meets expectations. And that works with doctors or staff. But let me throw a lifeline to the administrator. Having been on the opposite side with Dr. Mike, having been on the administrator side, there are times when that defensive wall is so hard, or they're having a moment, or maybe you picked the wrong moment to go to them with this conversation and they come after you, right? If it's really emotionally heightened for either one, just say, I'm throwing this out at you for thought. Can we circle back to this Friday before clinic? Or can we circle back to this tomorrow or during the lunch break or whatever the situation may be, so
Yeah.
that they do have time to complete that processing cycle and problem solve in their own head now that you've surfaced the issue. So I'm not saying that you have to stay with the fight until they get the answer or
Yeah.
any of those things. And this for staff too. Sometimes you have to surface it, give them what you want to talk about, and just say, hey, can we circle back on Monday, follow up and see where your head's at? And those types of conversations are so much more effective.
Yeah, because sometimes people, they get amygdala hijacked, right, in that
Yes.
moment, and they can't function, right? Is that kind of what goes on there?
Yeah, it's totally what goes on, Mike. And also keep in mind, you've had some time to think about this. Your amygdala had its time to get a little worked up, to get those emotions and to go through the loop. You've already done that work. You're hitting them with this information new. So they have to now process through that. And also keeping in mind, this is going to add another layer to it, but we all have different amygdalas. They work the same, but we have different storage there. We have different memories. We have different baggage. We have different feelings and beliefs and emotions. And that's not to say that you have to solve everybody's, but what you have to understand is there's so much more to it than just, I don't want to do what you told me to do.
Right. Well, wow, that was a great place to start. But we got so much richness there with that one example. And wow, what a great way to illustrate, a tip or something that you've taken away from coaching, which is, ask better questions. And we got a whole bunch of tips through that. Is there another technique that you think administrators would be smart to try to implement more in their interpersonal, dealings with their staff?
I think the one thing, and I want to turn it back on administrators a little bit more in terms of not necessarily how do you do it outward, but how do you do it inward? I want to apply the technique a little bit to self, because we, in our earnestness to be incredible leaders, myself included, I did this as well. We want to be the all-knowing, the all-fixing, the people we want to be for our people. We want to do the things, we want to do it all. And unfortunately, that's not really possible for us, because we are humans as well. So I'd love to offer some ideas on how we can turn some questions inward to help us as we try to figure out our mindset when we go into things.
I love that.
With my coaching clients, I will jokingly tell them it's my job to work myself out of a job. So I try to give tools and tips and techniques and a toolkit of questions that you can ask yourself to coach yourself a little bit. Now, I have my own coach, but I also have a toolkit of questions that I use to coach myself. So when I'm coaching managers, a lot of times I ask them to step back and ask themselves, something comes up, a project, an issue, a problem. What am I telling myself about this? Because you are, in fact, creating that same storyline that your team members are creating in their head. You're filling in the gaps. And that's a great second question, is what gaps do I have in my data and my knowledge, right? What blanks are there in my storytelling spreadsheet up in my head? And how do I fill in those blanks? Another great question is, how am I connecting this story to me personally? What am I telling
more about that?
Yeah, what am I telling myself about what this means to me? So for example, an employee isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? And let's say your leader calls you out on it. Like, hey, that tech isn't doing what I thought you told them to. And you're immediately going, oh, so he doesn't think I'm a good leader, right? Or you're immediately going, if I were better, this person would behave differently, right?
Yeah.
And some of that comes from your own value system, your own beliefs, the things that you learned, right? And in leadership coaching, sometimes we start with certain things and then we end up in places that leaders will look at me and go, how did we get here? And it's because we're trying to unravel those stories that are going on subconsciously in your head. So stopping and asking yourself those questions can help you get a leg up on your mindset going into these conversations. So you're not going in a defensive place or in a place where you're feeling a certain kind of way and therefore you're projecting onto somebody else.
Yeah, you've got to. I love the idea of doing the inner work.
Yeah.
So that you're not getting triggered, or you try to figure out, well, what is it that's emotionally triggering here for me?
Yeah. I think that all of what well, I shouldn't say all of what we do. I'm sure there are bosses out there who just want to do a terrible job, but most of us don't. Most of us are coming from a really earnest, really honest place, and we want to be great leaders. Most of us became leaders because we were really good at our job. And like I said, fixing problems. And somebody said, here, now be these people's boss. And we're like, how do we do that? Right. And so we have a lot of preconceived notions. We have to trial and error. I know, God knows I did. I know I made mistakes and I tried to apologize for the ones that I could, but I learned from each of them. And I think that's the best we can expect and hope for as leaders. Some of these tools and tips and being really intentional about how we move about our space and grow, those can help us accelerate that growth and leadership capability sooner rather than later. And that's beneficial to all of us.
When you were talking about thinking about the story that you're telling yourself and asking yourself, what does this mean about me as a person?
Yeah.
It made me think, a lot of times we are all kind of telling ourselves similar stories, but we think we're the only one, right? And we think everyone else has it together and I'm the only one who doesn't know. And then the whole, imposter syndrome thing. So I'm curious, from the people you've coached, you've probably coached a lot of people in similar roles to practice administrator and leaders. What are some of the common mindset traps and stories that people tell themselves that you think others might want to know that they're actually maybe more common than what they might think they are?
Yeah, I think you touched on one of them that's huge is everyone else knows or everyone else could do it better or everyone else has this under control. And what I often will share with people is what you see other people are doing, that's their opening night performance. That's their Instagram page, right? What you see about yourself, that's the behind the scenes footage, right? And you don't get the chance to see that with other people. And you don't necessarily know where those other people are. I invite people a lot to, if you have a trusted relationship with that person that you admire, go to them and say, I've noticed, Mike, that you're incredible at podcasting. It makes me feel a little nervous to think about that. Can you share with me your experience to getting to this point, to getting to this level? And then they can share with you and you might share with us as audience listeners that, hey, the first one, I feel like I look back now on and I'm like, oh, you can share with us your journey so that we can normalize it a little bit in our head so that we don't feel as alone. Because that's what happens is we start to question ourselves. We start to isolate and feel like we're in a bubble where nobody else can reach us. And then our autonomic nervous system goes a little haywire and we start getting into the fight or fear or freeze or fawn or all of the things. And we don't even realize it. That's happening at such a subconscious level that we don't really have the intention around it. So stopping and having those questions can be really impactful in that space. I would say the other thing that I hear from a lot of leaders is I don't have the time. I don't have the time. I don't have the time. And my thing is always, let's step back and look. What are you spending time on that really you shouldn't be spending time on? Right? We all have the same 24 hours. So if Mike can do it, how am I allotting my 24 hours that's different than Mike? Right? And so it's stepping back and going, how can we reprioritize? How can we look at time? And for me, I coach a lot of executives who have really busy calendars, and we start with the calendar review. We together start looking at things. And what I find very often is we attend a lot of meetings that aren't necessary just for informational purposes. That's like watching a 24-hour news station for 24 hours. Do you really need to do that? Will it benefit you? Right. And so it's stepping back and getting a little bit more selective on what is in fact necessary to help you drive the needle, what you can get executive summaries from, those types of things. I personally can say my last few years in practice, I had an amazing partner in our organizational leadership team, our executive team. Shout out Jackie if you're listening. Jackie's amazing. But Jackie and I would go to different meetings throughout the day. And then we both had to travel from the different clinics to our home. And we would get on a phone call on the Bluetooth while we were driving and catch each other up on what happened in the meetings so that we gave each other an executive summary. So we're both informed, but we both didn't have to be in two places at once. That was monumental. And it was a small shift that we made. And yeah, she might have been sad. She had to listen to me instead of some music on the way home, but it was really effective for both of us.
Cool. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. Not just looking at the inner world and delving into your inner child, but we're talking about, let's look at your schedule. Let's look at how you do things. And so as a coach, you kind of have to wear all those hats, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a coach, as a professional coach, when I do get that defensiveness from clients who are executives who are like, no, but you don't understand. I have to, it's like, okay, well, let's adjust expectations then. Right. And I've been told I'm a bold coach. So I'll ask stuff like, okay, so where are you going to get this time? You say you have to have this time and you can't get it from anywhere else. Where are you going to get it? And I will sit in the silence of that to allow them to kind of figure that out.
Yeah.
Right. And quite honestly, there are times, I don't want to oversimplify this. There are times where there is no more minute allotment to be found in somebody's schedule. So then it is, okay, let's step back and say, are we realistic with our goals? Right? Can you spend 4 hours in the gym if you have to work this many hours and be with your family and be with your friends? Do we need to adjust expectations?
Yeah.
And that's just what a coach can help you do, is to bring the clarity around what are your goals? Should your goals shift? How should that work? And a lot of times I find that I'm not talking people out of stuff. I'm just surfacing the things that they're running into that can't get them unstuck. And so,
it kind of seems like almost all problems are probably mindset problems, because I'll give you an example. A lot of times something will fall in my lap or someone will say, hey, can you do this? And my first thought is, I don't have time for that. There's no way I'm going to get that done. And I think it's a technical issue of like limited time, but really it's more of just a mindset issue that I need to unlock and realize, oh, maybe this really is doable. Would you say that's fair, that most problems are probably more like mindset problems than anything else?
I think yes. And so I think certainly there are problems that are bigger than a mindset. However, I think by tapping into the mindset and tapping into the stories, we can sometimes recognize that maybe that isn't our problem to solve, or maybe that isn't the direction we want to go in. I work with a lot of people who are like, I'm maxed out, I'm burned out at my company. I need a new job. And it's like, do you though? Let's stop and let's look at your current job, and let's look at the mindset and the expectations and the things that are happening. And sometimes it is. Sometimes I coach people out of their companies. And most of the time when that happens, it's a really good thing for everybody. But that being said, not everything is mindset, but a lot of it is, Mike. I think you hit it. A lot of it is. And if nothing else, it's getting clarity. It's just the clarity of I'm trying to do something that's impossible. And I'm holding myself to that standard of trying to get 28 hours out of my day. And no wonder I feel defeated. No wonder I feel like I can never accomplish anything, because I'm trying to get 4 more hours out of my day that it's impossible. You're chasing that. And it's just a clarity. It's not you're a bad person. It's not a character flaw.
Sure.
Right. And so I think a lot of us need to hear that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I guess my last question is, you have a lot of passion around this. And this is more of a personal question, I guess, is what do you think it says about you that this has become like your passion? You worked in healthcare directly, you were a leader, and you've shifted, what does it say about you that you're so excited about this work?
So when I first saw an eye behind a microscope, it was love at first sight. I've never experienced that with a person, but I've experienced that with an eyeball. Love at first sight. It's true. It's real. It happened. And I thought I would be in ophthalmology my entire career, running a clinic involved in that eye part of things, the anatomy, the physiology. I call myself an eyeball nerd. I just love it so much. What I found was throughout my journey and working my way up through the organization, I've been in eye care since I was 17, which, contrary to the lack of gray hair, is a long time ago. So I've been in love with the eye for a very, very long time. Throughout the course of that, I learned how to develop my own leadership style, and I got to partner with people to develop their own. Not to make them Savory 2.0s, but to help them figure out how they wanted to show up and become leaders. And I got to see that happen with my coworkers in beautiful ways. And I fell in love with that too. And so when I first started coaching, I thought the bulk of my work would be in ophthalmology. I realized that this part of developing ourselves as humans and human behavior, that transcends industries. I get to work with people all over the world. I think healthcare is maybe 25% of what I do. I do so much with leadership coaching outside of the healthcare space because we're all kind of running into a lot of the same constraints. The other piece of it is, I've worked with a coach for a number of years, and the impact that she's made in my life has been significant. And just like a lot of therapists will tell you, good therapists have therapists, good coaches have coaches. We recognize the limitations of our own selves. And so we work with people. And I think what it says for me is that I've seen the difference that this can make in my life in real time by being able to break down some of these preconceived notions that I have and work through some of my baggage. I've been able to see the difference that it made for me. And so that helping people, serving people aspect of healthcare that I've always been in love with translates and somewhat on a deeper level, especially when I can bring this to teamwork, when I can bring this to groups of people who maybe I teach them how to interact differently, how to hold staff meetings differently, how to give feedback differently. I've done that in some behavioral health groups in my area, and it's made a huge difference, both in their interaction with each other and their interaction with parents of kids that they work with. And so I think that's what it says. I think I've experienced this change and this difference in my own life. And I want to step in that gap for other people.
Awesome. Well, your passion shines through, Savory. Thank you so much for being on the show. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about what you do?
Yeah, well, I'm obviously on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. My website is savorycoaching.com. And then my email is super easy. It's savory@savoryterman.com. So very easy to find me any which way you look. And I have a name like Savory, so I can't really hide.
Well, it was only natural for Savory to be a guest of mine, being that my business is called Seasoned Advice. So, we're both
Absolutely.
very culinary in our mindset. Thanks again, Savory. I really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it. I'll drop all those links into the show notes,
Yeah.
for the recorded versions of this show so people can get in touch with you easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm always open for email questions and things like that because I had a lot of mentors throughout my career and still reach out for mentor and help. And so if there's ever anything I can do to be helpful to people in the eyeball world, once an eyeball nerd, always an eyeball nerd. So I'm happy to do that.
Well, that brings this episode of I Care Leadership Live to a conclusion. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show on your podcast app and share it with someone who would value the content. I promise to bring you more guests and content to help make you a better I Care clinical leader. I also invite you to subscribe to my HR newsletter for I Care leaders. You can find information about that at seasoned-advice.com. Now go out there and lead with confidence.